You're listening to Heroes in the Moment.
What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
Today, we're reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Marvel's newest movie. Does
Marvel's
it
newest
break
movie.
the wave of mid-films?
Yeah, does it?
We will discuss.
So, intro, initial takeaway. Well, I can honestly say it does not break that. Okay, well, first off, let me make myself clear here. Nathan definitely disliked this movie more than I did.
Yeah.
But there's certain takeaways I did like, and then there's certain things I didn't.
There's good things in
There
it.
is,
but there's not enough good things to make it.
And this is
a good
nowhere
movie.
near Marvel's like worst movie or anything like that. It's definitely better than a good majority of movies.
It's better than Love and Thunder.
It is, and I personally think that it's not the worst of the Ant-Man trilogy. I personally think it's better.
Really?
I do think it's better than Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Okay, I would probably disagree.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's better than Ant-Man and the Wasp, but not near as good as the first Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Personally. But yeah, I mean it's got hits and misses, but we'll discuss all those things. But I'm just glad we get to talk about Paul Rudd for the next little while. Because that's
Lots
my
of Paul
man.
Rudds.
Love Paul Rudd. And actually he was one of my favorite parts of the movie. But for a lot of
As
just
he
because of Paul
should
Rudd.
be.
All
Yeah.
right, so initial takeaways. Jimmy Woo came back.
Jimmy Woo,
My
yeah.
favorites, but just for a
Huge.
brief cameo.
I know, man.
I was so sad.
I wonder
And
how much he got
Luis,
paid
where was
for that.
Luis?
I know. I know.
We needed
What's
Luis.
his face? Peyton Reed was like, there's just no place for Luis. How are you gonna say there's no place for Luis?
Luis
man?
could have went in the Quantumania, man.
I guarantee you, the movie would have added like 15% more on Rotten Tomatoes.
I 100%
just with
agree.
Luis.
Luis
How
is
about
my
at
guy.
the end of the movie, they just bring him in to recap everything you just saw in case it was confusing.
Dude, just give a recap. We want to see him recap Endgame in the MCU events, man. Please. Where was Luis?
So there's a bunch of ants. There's a bunch of Paul Rudds. But then the one, that'd be
It's so funny.
dude.
I love that man. He was missing.
Just shout out Luis.
But Jimmy Woo did make a cameo, and that made up for a lot.
Yeah, and that would be some much needed comedy in this movie too. I feel like.
For sure. All right, so let's get into our characters. Then we'll go to pros, then we'll go to cons. We'll break down the 2 end credit scenes. We'll get into our theories, and then we're gonna actually do a new segment, how it should have ended, to where we have a setup what should have how this movie should have ended. That would have made this movie definitely a lot better than what it was.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into our characters. First off, obviously our main guy, Ant-Man, played by Paul Rudd, Scott Lang, and I love him. First off, I love the character.
Of course.
I love Ant-Man. I can't wait to see him again. I'm actually really glad that they didn't kill this character off, even though I can't say that about some characters. But I'm glad that they didn't do it to him. The only thing that I didn't like about this movie with Ant-Man is the fact that this did not feel like his movie.
It did.
Did you feel the same way?
It felt very Cassie oriented.
I don't think it even felt Cassie oriented. I don't even know whose movie it was, to be honest. That's how
it felt like they were just throwing out screen time to that main family and then Kang. But it's kind of hard to figure out like what the theme was and who in fact was the lead.
I agree.
Like even in Ant-Man, and the Wasp, like it's very clear like it was Ant-Man's movie.
Right.
It feels so diluted, and this is not like a Civil War case because Civil War had a ton of people, but it was Cap's allegiance to Bucky versus the allegiance to the nation, right? Whatever, represented by Tony Stark's character,
right?
This was not that.
It was not, and it's really unfortunate to see because it not only it didn't feel like his movie. In certain elements, it did, and in the beginning of the movie, they built up this arc on how like him and Cassie aren't necessarily getting along. She's doing things she shouldn't, and things like that are going on, which is great. It's a great idea for a character arc, but then after the first act of the movie, they abandoned that completely.
I know.
And it doesn't come back to it. And I didn't like that. Exactly. And Ant-Man himself did not have a character arc in this movie. He just was the same throughout the entire film. So I didn't like that that generic feel to it because it didn't feel like his movie for one thing. And then I'll talk about this later, but it didn't feel like the end to a trilogy either.
No, it didn't.
But I'll talk about that more in depth. But still,
I don't like what they do with this character in the beginning either.
With like the books.
Yeah, all the success. I don't know. Maybe that's the character development for him. Like he goes from initially being like cocky with all of his, stuff from saving the world, and then, but it's not like he makes like a sacrifice play in the end either. Though. He's just kind of Ant-Man.
Yeah, he is. He's just the same person all the way through. I didn't mind the beginning, but that was the reason I didn't mind the beginning is I thought that he would be humbled through the process of the movie. He'd be humbled, and then he'd go through this tragic state with him and his daughter, and some stakes would happen to where it'd be a build off, and then eventually he'd go and see that I don't need to be this way. There's a more serious side to me.
Like family's the most important thing.
Fortunately, we didn't get what we wanted to, exactly. But unfortunately, we didn't get that in this movie. So that was disappointing. Now, Paul Rudd's performance was great. Everything
it
about
was good.
it was
but man,
fine.
the writing for his character was whack. And if you really think about it, and now that I think about it, it really feels like it was Hope's movie. With with her whole past, the whole movie is about what she got going on, and with Kang only interested in her.
You mean Janet?
Sorry, yeah, with Janet. Sorry, not Hope.
It is.
Yeah, with
I
Janet.
feel like it definitely is more. I agree, Janet's movie.
It just.
But
it was wasted.
I know. It should have been Ant-Man's movie. They could have definitely played it off better than what they could have done, which stinks. But ultimately, like, I didn't have a problem with him as a character, though. But it was just
he was fine.
Yeah, he was fine.
Funny.
Right.
I laughed at his jokes. Paul Rudd did a great performance.
He did.
I just feel bad with what he was working with.
I agree. I agree too. All right, next character we can talk about is the Wasp, Hope Van Dyne, played by Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah.
And she got mega super sidelined in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate when the title is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
I really feel like was the most underrated part about this entire movie. Like you said, she was silent. I mean, like she's a stepmom. I really feel like a lot of the movie's plot should have revolved around her like becoming close with Cassie.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, especially because they hint, that they're not really close. But her performance was great, but she didn't get any time barely at all.
And I mean,
but she was great.
Exactly.
In the time that she did.
I mean, she was the suit. I love the suit. The new suit, the yellow. It looks great. And for Wasp to be, I mean, I know it's Janet Van Dyne in the comics that is the main Wasp, but for Wasp, this is being the one they're using for the MCU, not getting as much as she should in the character. I mean, in actuality, her and Ant-Man should have been in the original Avengers movie. So it's like unfortunate that we're not getting this, especially in a movie that's supposed to be about the two of them.
I know.
And it was definitely tragic about that we didn't get that. And we also didn't really get much of a character arc between them except her and her mom, and her getting mad that her mom, didn't tell her everything and stuff like that.
The whole movie is just, tell me your secrets.
Exactly.
No, I don't.
And then again, they just forgot all about that after she told them, and so she told them, and then everything was forgiven, everything was good.
I know. Like, by the way, we're good. Like, there was like no tension there anymore.
And there should have been.
And they tried so hard to build the tension. Like, what is this secret? When I feel like most of the people could guess what happened.
Oh yeah,
she had accidentally helped or done something with Kang. Like, it was very clear.
Yes. I agree, and it's just it was just tragic because I mean, she could have been utilized a lot better than she was for it to be her name in the title. So it was very unfortunate.
Rip. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. But next up, we got to talk about the definitive best part of the movie, which is really crazy because apparently lately MCU's been doing everything good about the villains, but everything wrong about everything else. But Kang the Conqueror, man, the absolute best part of this movie. Every
100%.
scene he was in, he took it. Every scene he was in was good. His dialogue was actually really good. Everything about his power set, everything was good.
It's just weird because it honestly felt like he shouldn't have been in the movie.
Exactly. Exactly. Like it didn't fit.
Not, I'm not saying that it's bad to have a completely different vibe. It's good that he's not a comical character. It's good that when he delivered his lines, right, Major spoke with really slowly.
I know.
And he was intentional.
Right.
And he meant what he said, but he did not belong with the other cast.
And that's the thing too is, I agree.
Outshine everybody.
The fact that I didn't think he was going to be like the actual main villain of this film.
I didn't either.
And he was. And that's the thing is like, I know that technically, only two other characters have been main antagonists of two or more movies.
Who?
And that being Thanos in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And Loki in Thor and Avengers. And then obviously now it's going to be Kang from Quantumania and then in Kang Dynasty, but now he's going to get Secret Wars as well. So it's like, I don't know.
It should have been MODOK.
It should have been.
Controlled by Kang, but...
I agree. Well, MODOK should have been controlled by Kang, but Kang shouldn't have been the main villain. MODOK should have been.
No.
And they didn't
we got far too many fight scenes with Kang.
Right. Right.
And we'll talk about more in our cons, but it's... Jonathan Majors, you freaking delivered your performance. I don't know why his dialogue was great, but everyone else's dialogue was
that's
bad.
what was really weird.
His lines were fire.
His lines were fantastic. They were serious. They fit.
This?
Like he was talking about killing Avengers before you, the one with the hammer and all this stuff. And that was a great line.
The way he spoke was like he meant every
and you got
single
chill bumps
word.
and you were like, whoa.
I'm like, whoa.
Dude, this guy's intense.
This guy's nuts.
And they did deliver in those aspects, and Kang was fantastic in this movie, but then other aspects they just did not.
I know, dude. It really, I feel bad for Majors because
I do too.
He just outshines everybody by far.
Yeah. So
I'm just glad they didn't do anything comical with him.
I agree. I'm excited he didn't make him a comedy show, but made him a ruthless being. But I think he could have been more ruthless in this movie.
Been 10 times
but
more ruthless.
I'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
That's related.
All right, the next part. We talked about the definitive best. Now we got to talk about the definitive worst part of this movie, and that being Cassie.
Matt, the biggest L, one of the biggest L's in the Marvel movie.
Cassie was by far the worst character in this movie.
Catherine Newton, I've liked you in other projects, but respectfully, you were not good.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I blame a lot of the dialogue, and I blame that she had, and I also blame like the character and the way they had it, but also her acting was not that good in this movie either.
Her acting was terrible.
Yeah.
All right. It was very clear. Every line she said, I wanted to laugh. Like, I was laughing at her. Her lines, which is not her fault, her lines, dialogue was terrible, bro.
Yes,
there was no character development with her.
Like, even though we only knew her when she was younger before the blip, I don't feel like it felt like the same character. Like,
no, she's like,
there wasn't enough character development to show how she became this character.
Exactly.
And I don't know why you would just recast it to her just because she's a bigger name.
Yeah, I go to prison because I want to stand up for stuff.
I know.
And
it's
then,
like where
that
whole
whole thing with Paul Rudd was,
and they didn't even mention it as if because he was gone for 5 years and she had to do certain things that wouldn't been improving. But I don't know. And now it's been so long that the young actress from Ant-Man and the Wasp I think is old enough to have played.
I know. So I really feel like they should have given her a chance. I mean,
I agree.
Newton is 26 years old. 26 years old.
And she's supposed to be playing like what? It's 15, 16-year-old?
15,
so it's like,
and it was just, dude, it was obnoxious. She was just annoying, dude. Every scene she was in, I had a hard time taking seriously.
Yeah.
I was like, die.
I know, and she was.
Please.
I mean, I knew she wasn't going to die in the setting up of New Avengers and hopefully Young Avengers, and that'll be better for her there.
Recast,
but I don't. I mean, it just could have been that certain elements there, but I don't know. It's just she was not good in this movie.
Good.
I didn't like it.
I can't think of anything good to say about it. Really.
Her plots were not good. I mean, just everything about her character in this movie was not good. So that's what was just a shame a little bit about that. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, next up is another actually good part of this movie character, and that being Janet. Janet actually was really great in this movie.
Yeah.
I will say I actually do think that Kang and Janet's roles in the movie were the best out of anybody.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer killed it in her roles.
She did great, yeah.
And her dialogue, some of it was cheesy, but not as much as some of the other characters.
Yeah.
And her story in the quantum realm was great.
It was good.
Let me put that out there.
And it was really, like you said, the only story that kind of connected and made sense.
Right.
She feels guilt over accidentally assisting someone,
Like
rise to
him,
power. And then the cause of that we get to see with all the, destruction. So obviously we can feel for her. I don't know. I really do feel like they played out the whole secret thing for far too long in the movie. And now it's really one of my only big gripes with that. But I thought she was really good.
I think so. I mean, I think it was it could have been dragged out a little bit too long, but I think it was kind of nice too because you have to build up that tension, but then it didn't go anywhere after she revealed it, unfortunately, like it should have. But I did like her in this movie. I do think that she was good, but I do think that they could have played it off to where that was more pivotal to what they were doing instead of just like that much of a side plot when it should have been more of the main. So, I did enjoy that, but still certain elements could have been better there too.
Yeah.
All right, next up we got to talk about Michael Douglas, Hank Pym, and personally sidelined. He was, and for him to be the original Ant-Man and the original character,
he don't even got a suit.
He
should have had a suit in there.
He should have had a suit. We should have seen more involvement from him. And I feel like
he would have shined in this movie.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like he was uncharacteristically funny. To be honest, like a lot of his lines were comedic relief, and he's not a comedic relief character.
No, not at all. They turned him just into the driver of the ship. That's all he did.
They turned him to the driver of the ship and like the grandpa of the movie. Like, that's all he was.
He's so much cooler than that, man.
He is.
I wanted to see him suit up, dude. That would have been awesome.
Been so cool. I would love to see them suit up. I would love to see Janet suit up more and then both like go to town, but we just didn't get that like we should have. And I really would have liked to seen Hank shine here to where he didn't. All he did was control ants, talk about ants, and then say cuss words. I mean, that's all he was.
It was just... wasted.
I know.
I mean, Michael Douglas is great. The character is great.
Oh, yeah.
But they did not utilize him. Him and Evangeline Lilly. They just had so much there that they didn't use, and instead they focused on Cassie's kind of weird plot with her parents that really didn't make sense.
No.
And then the actual decent plot with the secret past, of Janet and King.
Right. So it is definitely sidelined.
I feel bad for him, dude.
I agree. All right, next up we have to talk about one of the best parts of cinematic history.
Outside of
the greatest character ever made.
The greatest Avenger.
The best Avenger in MODOK. My guy.
Listen, man.
Darren.
I could spend forever talking about this.
Okay, so
I don't even know where to start.
Okay. I will say I do think it was not like, he was not a villainous, he was comedic, he was, all these things, but I loved it. I genuinely did. Every time he was on screen, I was laughing, I was enjoying it. I mean, his whole death scene was absolutely hysterical. That was probably my favorite, not my favorite scene of the movie, but my funniest
it was
scene.
funny, but I don't think it should have been funny.
You don't think so?
No.
I understand that, and I do. Like, I was like, oh, why is it so funny when in the moment? But then later I was like, it was funny, man. Like, he was like, Scott, I've always thought of you as a brother. And he's like, yeah.
He's
they
like,
barely know each other. And
die an Avenger.
And I'm like, at least I get to die an Avenger.
He's like, yeah, you're in.
And then Scott's like, yeah, you do. It was so funny,
I was so thrown off because I was spreading
man.
some of the emotional. But I will say, first of all, I was distracted, obviously, by the CGI. I think
it wasn't that bad.
I thought it was bad.
It wasn't bad because that's what he looks like, and that's how he's supposed to look like.
It was. Dude,
like, that's how he's supposed to look.
Bad,
I mean,
man.
how else are you gonna fix that? I mean, there's no fixing that.
It was just so weird because he's this ultimate killing machine, but then he's cracking these terrible jokes on the side. Like, I couldn't get with it.
I thought,
and
then,
then,
oh man, I
the worst scene in the entire movie is when he's talking with Cass. He's like, I don't want to be a dick anymore.
That is the worst part.
And
of the
she's
movie.
like,
I agree.
You don't have to be. She's like, it's not too late to be a dick anymore. And he's like, really? It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
But like, I will say, like, I did laugh at his lines. The whole Darren thing was just. I just wish I wouldn't have gone that route.
I understand, and that scene I agree was horrible.
And that like plot trying to tie him with Cassie, like, oh, I try to kill you when you're 6 kind of scene, making them seem like they have history, was just weird.
Yeah, I understand. But personally, I really actually legitimately enjoyed him, and I just had a good time every time he's on screen. Yes, I know he should have been the main villain. He should have been more ruthless. I personally don't think it should have been Darren. I think it should have been new. It should have been actually MODOK and not like a redone version. But
he got killed off.
He did get killed off, and that makes me frustrated. I would have loved to see him again.
Cool character.
He is. He's really cool, and he's the greatest Avenger. And I would love to see him. Maybe they'll bring him back for King Dynasty to team up. And I don't know.
Have you seen that one meme where it's like those posters for Endgame?
Avenge the Fallen.
Avenge the Fallen. It's freaking Darren.
Dude, I love Darren. But I legitimately did like MODOK in this movie, even though, like, it could have been better and it wasn't necessarily comic accurate, but I had a good time watching him. I really did. All right, next up is Bill Murray and his character and his 3 minutes of screen time.
This feels like a shorter version of like Tobey Maguire's role in Babylon. Just like it felt like a really out of place.
It did
cameo, but that still was nice.
I know. I think all Bill Murray wanted was just to be in the MCU some way, some form, and then his goal was to turn
Kyler.
Janet, yeah, he was like a Lando Calrissian character, turning Janet and them in, and that kind of thing. And I didn't. The scene itself, I didn't mind, and I like Bill Murray's character in this movie, but it was just very like out of place. I agree.
Like, a woman got needs. I was down here 30 years. He's like, yeah, I got the human parts that matter. There's more innuendos in there than I thought there would be.
There was.
But it wasn't anything outstanding.
Yeah.
But he's just a very quirky character.
He was.
Bill Murray.
He was. I agree.
But he did a good job with what he had.
I agree. All right, now talk about other side characters that we. So we had the People Rebellion.
Yeah.
The girl who was the leader. Don't remember her name. Don't really care.
Of all time.
I didn't like her.
Nothing to distinguish her from anybody else.
No, I mean these.
I don't even know her name.
No, these were the most like side characters. Like, why are they in this movie ever? Like, because nobody knows them. Nobody cares about them.
Terrible side characters, and the main characters didn't have really compelling stories.
I know.
So you're like, who do I like need to be invested
for the guy with holes? That guy was a legend.
Yeah,
he was a legend.
Was just,
I love that
sucking
dude.
everybody.
He was
in.
great.
How many holes do you have?
I know.
What?
He's like, I don't have any holes. And then he's like, I got holes now. And it's
I
so
got
funny.
holes.
That scene was awesome.
David, what's his face?
Yes, the
who's
guy
in every superhero movie.
Yeah,
feels like.
he was in the first 2 Ant-Mans as a different character, and then now he's brought back as the guy who has holes.
That's
now.
crazy.
I know.
Yo, Peyton Reed looking out for that
But
boy.
I did like him in this movie. But other than that, I didn't like any other side characters and no really point to talk about him. All right.
Facts.
So now we get to go into our pros of this movie and what it did have to offer and to talk about what it did bring to the table and what we did enjoy from
It's
this movie.
clear what the pro is.
It is clear.
Everybody knows. Everybody would say.
It was, and I'll let you start off, Nathan, with that.
Dude,
pro.
it's just Jonathan Majors,
Yes.
man.
Yes,
it's
it
just
is.
Jonathan Majors.
It is.
In this movie, he's a clear standout. He doesn't fit in because everything he says is fire. His performance is fire. His delivery, fire. The only thing that did wrong is not making him more powerful, but that's not his fault. He stands out in this movie,
Yes.
and it really feels like they should have gotten a smaller scale villain. Like they did mess up by making him the big villain.
I
but
completely agree. Kang,
Huge W.
by far the best part of this movie. Definitely my first pro as well. Fantastic in every sense. Yes, his power level is good. It's just being overwhelmed by ants I didn't like, but it still was. It was cool to see.
about that,
And he was great in this movie in every aspect, and I can't wait to see him more in the future. And we know we will.
Yeah.
My next pro is the Kang and Janet storyline, the backstories and the stuff like that going on there was really good.
Yeah.
The backstory of him landing in the Quantumania after being exiled there, and Janet being there, and then working together, and him manipulating her, and then her realizing what he was and destroying and all that stuff. That part was great.
Yeah.
That part of the movie was fantastic. I just wish we got more of that translated into the rest of the movie, but that part was definitely a huge pro of mine, and I thought it was great.
I only have 2 more pros left, and this is gonna sound weird and very comical, but I actually mean it. My second pro is there was a lot of Paul Rudds.
That's true.
Like
It's
there
true.
was a lot of Paul Rudds,
And it's fantastic.
Specifically, that one scene where he's trying to figure out how to get this thing right because he's trying to
Yes.
trade destruction for his daughter's
That was a
life.
great part of the movie.
Yeah. But that scene in particular is really good. Seeing him trying to figure that out. But seeing so many Paul Rudds and the Baskin Robbins Paul Rudds. Legend. So out of place.
Dude, the legend. He was running.
He was
like, where are we
he's like,
going?
why am I here? Is what he says. Like,
That was actually legitimately funny.
dude, I was dying at
yeah,
that
that
part.
was funny.
But that whole scene of working together with himself
Right.
and then seeing how they
Okay.
all kind of combine on, with
Okay.
their daughter in mind. But dude, seeing that many Paul Rudds did bring joy. So that's the pro. I know it sounds dumb, but I actually really like that part.
I understand.
It's a good
like,
part.
bro, I cried when the Baskin Robbins fell off the mountain. Like, I was like, no!
I felt more connected to him than the actual. Like, I'm dead serious, dude. Baskin Robbins Paul Rudd was the main character, in my opinion. He was
the best.
He was the best. His sacrifice was not in vain.
It's not in vain. He was a legend in all he did. Oh, my goodness. That's so funny. Okay, I agree. That was great.
Oh, but yeah, that's what I.
All right. The next one, this may be
Holy crap.
controversial, and that's okay. But the actual, and I'll explain my reasoning, the actual plot of this movie was good. Okay. Now, the writing surrounding
It was
the
the
plot.
execution.
Yes.
But
That's
the
what I'm
idea-
getting to.
yeah.
The writing and the execution of it was not. The whole idea of them getting sucked into the quantum realm because of a machine that goes wrong, great concept. Finding out that it's about Kang, how Kang wants them to do something for him so he can get out and do his business in other universes. That's an incredible plot. And it would have worked, but it was not executed like it should have. And I'll tell you how it could have been redeemed and how it should have ended section of this podcast. But
Yeah.
the plot itself was solid. Just the execution, I agree, was not good. So I have that as a pro.
Okay. This is my final pro I have. And it's the performances of Evangeline Lilly and then Michael Douglas. Specifically Evangeline Lilly. But like we already touched on this before, but I really feel like in this movie I was like grasping for the good parts,
Right.
I feel like they're just a wave of bad, so I was trying to take whatever I could.
Right.
But like we already said, they were sidelined, but these performances were good, and we didn't get to see much of them. But I really do feel like they outshined. I don't know, in some aspects, Paul Rudd and what's her face, Janet.
Yeah.
At times.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm sticking
Yeah.
with it, and that's the last good thing I have.
Okay, my last pro is the second act in general. Now, if the second act was like a standalone story or something like that, or if they would have expanded that into a movie, it would have been a great movie. It would have been the best of the Ant-Man trilogy. And the second act of itself was great. The whole aspect, and mostly because Cassie was in prison the whole time. But the whole aspect of Kang sending Ant-Man, Scott Lang on a mission to do his bidding because of the stakes of his daughter on the line was great. Him being sent to go into this place, and we get to see all the Mega Paul Rudds and the Baskin Robin Paul Rudds and all this stuff go together and climb up this pyramid to get this goal of Kang. And then you also translate between that and then the storyline of Hank, Janet, and Hope, and you see the Janet's backstory and her telling of what happened between her and Kang in the Quantum Realm originally, and how they created the chair, they created the stuff, and they went through all these elements and seeing the backstory of Kang and what he did and what he's done and all this stuff and all those build-ups, and then her trying to stop him and all this stuff. That whole second act portion of the movie was really good.
So what I'm hearing is because Cassie was in jail and she could not get out to do anything stupid, and even in jail she was annoying.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, shut up.
That's a big.
She was
portion.
in jail, and it focused on the other kid.
It did.
That's
I
why.
mean, that's the truth. But legitimately, if they would have expanded on that second act and done more in that kind of the majority of the second act was actually relatively serious too.
Yeah.
So
it was nice.
The second act, like that would have been a great movie, man. Really would have been like really up there. So
they should have kept that theme. For
they should have.
Thing,
So I'm disappointed that, but that's my last pro.
Okay.
All right. Start off with cons. My first con is Cassie. It's just Cassie. I did not like her in this movie compared to the others because I actually liked Cassie when she was the little girl in the first two Ant-Mans. Yeah. I really did like her. And then now I just don't. And she just brought down the movie. And I know it's already talked about it, but I just did not like it. So that's my first con.
Nah, listen, man, I totally agree. With mine, I'm going to go with the CGI.
Okay.
Obviously,
it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
It wasn't as bad. I can't blame the VFX artists because they're on this time schedule, and I really feel like this will hopefully be the last project that we see.
I think it will be
with Poor, but in my opinion, I couldn't connect with this movie because I knew it was fake, right? In a movie, you want to feel like it's real, that the stakes are real,
right?
But to me, it was pretty clear. The entire movie, except for the beginning and the end, are on a green screen, and I thought that was very evident. So the CGI it kind of just distracted me from like the little moments and what was happening between the characters because I'm not expecting Way of Water,
right? No,
CGI, but I just found it extremely distracting. Like I said, I know it's not the artist's fault. If they had time, it would have been good. But like CGI recently has been terrible with these schedules. So that's my first one.
Okay. My next con is actually the character development used in this movie. Like I touched on earlier with Paul Rudd and Cassie and this stuff, but like they completely abandoned the first act character arcs that they had built.
Yeah.
And they didn't come back to them. And that just is lazy writing to me. And especially because the writer of Ant-Man Wasp Quantumania is actually a really talented writer. He wrote tons of stuff for Rick and Morty and things like that.
Really?
So he's really talented. So it really surprised me the level of cheesiness that it was. So it's definitely disappointing for there. And then there just wasn't a good character arc, wasn't good character development. Also, this comes from Peyton Reed as well, but I'm just disappointed in that. So that was the next con.
Okay. I know you mentioned before that you enjoyed the plot, but I thought it was pretty basic. And let me tell you why. I feel like if you combined the Jumanji movies, the recent ones, with Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and then with a touch of Star Wars, I feel like you had this movie.
Okay.
Like where you have this device, and I feel like that was the most unbelievable part about the whole movie, how one bad hit on it like pulls him in. I still don't completely get that, but the whole family pulled into a new world has been done before, obviously, and they didn't do as well as Jumanji did it. The whole Star Wars thing, right, with Bill Murray's character and the ships and everything.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, the suits, bro, especially with Cassie and Paul Rudd. All I could see after those memes. So I just feel like while the plot had something going for it, I feel like they didn't execute it at all. And it really just kind of felt like to me kind of a rip-off of some classic movies that we've seen.
Okay, I understand that.
That's how I felt about it.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, respect. All right, my next con is, it did not, and I touched about this, we both touched about this earlier, and this is just a major con, it did not feel like the last of a trilogy. It didn't feel like the last Ant-Man movie, and that's what stinks is like, I mean, could they do an Ant-Man 4? It could. I just hope it's not Peyton Reed, but somebody else to do it. But I don't know. It just didn't feel like the last of a trilogy, and as it should have. And I feel like it could have been better executed in that way. And along with that, it not feeling like the last of the trilogy, it just did not feel like Ant-Man's movie as well. And I touched on that earlier as well. But it's just, I mean, some elements, it just did not have the stakes. It did not have the consequences, and it didn't have the ending that redeemed. I mean, the ending I'll talk about in a minute, but
Yeah.
it was definitely a big con for me.
Yeah, speaking of stakes, that's one of my big ones. This movie had no stakes.
Yeah.
And especially for being the last of a trilogy, Michael.
Right.
I know we both expected to see some deaths.
Oh, I 100%
there has to be.
did.
I
I did.
100% I expected Hank to die, and I expected maybe Janet to die.
Yeah.
I thought there'd be some sacrificial play, for the younger
Right.
people.
I did too.
There was nothing. And it just doesn't make sense because, not only are they in this new world, but they're facing the big bad of the whole next phase.
Yeah.
So the stakes should be huge. Like, you should be constantly worried that they're just going to get obliterated with this, like, a snap of his fingers.
Right.
But you're not. In the end, he gets defeated by a bunch of ants, which I can't tell you why. But there are just no stakes. And I never felt worried for a moment in the movie that somebody was going to die.
Yeah. I agree, and that brings me to my next con being the ending of this movie. The third act and the ending itself was not that good. The battle sequence was cool, and the whole Sing Kang's abilities was awesome.
Yeah.
But he killed one person in the entire film, and to me, it just wasn't fitting. And he killed one person, then he was defeated by a whole bunch of ants. And I know there were 1,000 years of ants, and you can use that excuse. And there was a lot of them, which makes sense in a way. But still, I would have liked to have seen a different light in that way.
Yeah.
And then him to be beaten by Ant-Man
Ants.
itself, like,
And speaking of, why did the ants kill him? Like, no, they ripped off all his armor and just
I
left
know,
him alone.
and just left him alone.
Like,
what
why
even
wouldn't they have
happened there?
killed him?
Right.
Like, no more Marvel movies with Kang.
I know. I don't know. It was really, really weird there.
Ant-Man in a punch out.
Yeah. I know.
What?
I know. I mean,
With Kang?
it could have been cool, and it was. I actually do think that scene was cool, but the stakes weren't high. You didn't feel like anybody was about to die. You didn't worry about Paul Rudd's character like you should have in that scene, and that was tragic to me. I mean, and then Kang, I don't see Kang doing the punch out. I mean, I think he used this scene as practice for Creed 3 is all it was.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
It really was.
And
He's just warming
it
up for Michael B. Jordan.
I don't know. It didn't fit, and just the ending itself.
Yeah.
There was no stakes. Nothing tragic happened, and it should have. So that was a big con of mine.
I'm gonna go also with the dialogue. We've already touched
Yes.
on it. Jonathan Majors' dialogue, which I don't understand, was good, and Paul Rudd's, was decent. But I really feel like most of the dialogue in the movie was terrible,
And that
especially
really
from
doesn't make
Cassie and the
sense.
side characters.
I know.
There's cheesy, basic
It's
stuff. You
really
can guess.
weird how like their lines can be cheesy, but then
Like,
his
they
was
decide
not.
to give good lines
Like
to the other
why? Like
characters.
even in Thor: Love and Thunder, like their lines were all cheesy. Even Gore's were cheesy.
Yeah.
But in this movie, Kang's were
They're like,
great.
by the way, here's some great lines.
I know. So it's like it was really weird. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's just hard, man. When you have
Right.
bad CGI and bad dialogue, it's
I
like
know.
it's so hard to connect.
It's hard to get into
with
it.
what's going
I agree.
on.
And that I don't have any more cons.
Okay, I have another one. Dude, the poor side characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie, like we already said, they didn't touch enough on the main characters. So it's pretty much a given that the side characters are going to be complete nobodies. But the one girl,
Facts.
none of us know her name.
Nope.
There's nothing to distinguish her from any other person.
I know.
The guy with the beam, I mean, he was a little unique. The blob guy was cool.
He was.
They did nothing with the telepath man.
No.
Telepath man tells him the bridge code, and that's the entire
I know.
part in the movie.
He should have died, but
Like
that's just me.
there's no stakes with them either
know.
with the side characters. Like
No.
they're very poorly written.
Yeah.
And then
agree.
Along with you, I don't want to repeat it, but I also had Cassie's character.
Yep. Oh,
I had
absolutely.
the third act and the ending.
Yep.
And then I just had how they killed off MODOK.
When the movie actually, this is kind of funny because the movie actually ends with Paul Rudd taking a bite of cake and having a bad taste in his mouth, and that's how a lot of us walked out of the movie with a bad taste in our mouth.
I didn't even understand what.
I don't know, like literally, he's taking a bite of cake and then he's like, "Ugh," and that's how the movie
Like,
ended.
what's symbolic
I know.
about the cake?
That everybody's leaving the movie with a bad taste in their mouth. That's what
Yeah,
it's called.
bro.
I mean, I don't know. That was
Like,
weird to me.
I was like, is it poison? No, it's just bad
It's just
cake.
bad
I
cake.
guess. There has to be some symbolism, but yeah, man, it's just. I feel bad for Jonathan Majors, but
feel
there's
bad
just
for
a
Paul
lot
Rudd.
there's a lot of bad. There's some good, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of bad that
Yeah.
really overshadows it.
All right, let's get into our in credit scene discussion. To talk about the in credit scenes because the in credit scenes themselves were not bad.
No, they weren't.
They set up a lot in the future. So the first in credit scene, we see the Council of Kangs meeting, and honestly, all of these Jonathan
Lot of
Majors,
Kangs.
all of these Kangs, and then we see the main core three that are going to be big threats to the future, being Ramatut, which is the Egyptian pharaoh
Yeah.
king. We got the Scarlet Centurion,
Scarlet
version of Kang.
Centurion.
That's the one with all the like the face, the weird
Yeah.
face. And then you had Immortus, which is like the leader of the Council of Kangs.
Okay.
So I wonder how they're going to be like used because they're Kangs from multiple different multiverses. I mean, this is a multiverse saga, so we're pulling them in.
Were they the ones in Loki season 1? Those three
Well,
statues.
Oh yeah,
were they
I bet
based
they were.
off of them?
I bet they were. And there's many theories that each of these characters are going to be villains in different movies or villains like set up. Like there's a theory that Rama Tut's going to be the main villain of Moon Knight season 2. There's a theory that Immortus is going to be the overarching villain of Secret Wars. There's all types of different theories that works. And then there's the theory that the King the Conqueror we saw in Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is going to come back as the Beyonder and all this other kind of stuff, which would be cool to see. And that these Council of Kangs banished the Conqueror to the quantum realm
for
because
being
of his
conquerish.
for his abilities, for what he does. That's kind of cool to see.
So he's too powerful for them?
I don't want to say necessarily too powerful, but
like what
they
he
just
was
don't
doing.
agree with what he was doing.
Okay. They're like, morally, killing people is bad.
Yeah.
We'll excite you for it.
But I'm interested to see how they go with these variants in the future of Marvel. So that was interesting to see in the first.
I will say,
scene.
I think it would be cool if they kind of say this end credits scene because one of the cool mysteries of the film is like, who exiled him?
Yes.
Who had that power?
Right. My initial thought was going to be I thought it was the Watcher. The Watcher. That was my initial thought. When
or
I was
like
talking about
maybe
that.
like a future Avengers team that somehow survived.
Yeah,
or-
it's very possible, but
yeah.
we'll see that. So that was the first. Then the second end credit scene I really liked because it sets up Loki season 2, and we see a Kang variant Victor Timely up on stage explaining, and then you see Loki and the goat Mobius over there like talking about how to stop. So the whole these variants. So the whole plot of season 2 of Loki is going to be stopping these Kang variants.
Yeah.
And they're not going to beat the Conqueror because that's going to be the main one, and they're probably not going to go with Rama Tut, Scarlet Centurion, or Mortis, but they're going to take out a ton of different Kang variants. That's really cool.
Do you think it was a sneak peek in season 2, or do you think it was leading up?
It was a sneak peek.
It was definitely a sneak peek.
We're definitely going to see that scene in season 2.
Okay, so they're going around, everyone's mind is wiped, right? And they're just trying to stop all these different...
I mean, like, as he remains said in Loki season 1, you've unleashed so many different versions of me, some a lot worse than others. So that build up to the fact that we're getting the Council of Kangs and seeing all this stuff happen. But we have to remember, though, even when we see all this, Kang the Conqueror is our main one. Don't forget that one. The one we saw in this movie is the main one. But these other ones are going to have some roles to play as well.
The one defeated by the ants.
Facts.
Dude, I would rub that in his face every day if I saw him.
You just have a Mortis going, you got me.
By the way, ants beat him, man.
All right, so now we talk about, we kind of already talked about the theories within credit scenes. We know it's going to build up to Kang Dynasty. We know it's going to build up to all these different things going on and what's going on there. So let's go to our new section of how it should have ended.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lay with this. This is how the third act should have been.
Okay, lay it on me,
First
baby.
off, I would have made the movie itself less cheesy anyway. I would not have cut out a lot of the dialogue.
Yeah.
I would have made more character development. But just the ending in general is what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
So here's what I would have done in the ending. I would have still had this final battle of everybody going against Kang in the quantum realm and all these threats and everything going on. But first, I would have had an ultimate scene of Kang and his abilities, his full suited out.
Yeah.
I would have had him kill every single one of those side characters. The girl, the guy with the lights, the telepath.
Without
the
even
holes.
trying.
I would have had him absolutely obliterate
him, yeah.
First off, give some stakes. And then I would have Hank come in, right? Suited up in an Ant-Man suit and bringing the ants in. Okay, I would have still had that.
Okay.
But the ants, he feels a little bit threatened by them at first, but then he gets really angry and he just sends out a full blast of fury and they all turn to dust.
Okay.
Is what I would have done.
I'm seeing it right now.
Would have turned to dust. Then he would have gone and fought Hank Pym. Ooh. All right. So this is what would have happened.
That's hype.
And then you see him fighting Hank Pym a little bit. They have a little tussle. He's using his Ant-Man suit, shrinking and stuff. And then Hank makes a mistake. Hope flies in. Hank gets stabbed. This is what would happen. Hank gets stabbed. Hope screaming, right? Hope's like, no, Dad, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's dead. All right, he dies. All right.
Yo,
or at least, maybe not kill him right off the bat, but
he's
laying down. He's definitely dying.
Yeah.
And then Kang goes up to his mortal, his throne room to try to protect his orb. And that's where him and Ant-Man have their confrontation.
Okay.
And then Hope goes and has an emotional conversation with her dad, and he passes in her arms, is what I would have had happen. Ooh. Then I would have had her get filled with anger, and her go up to help Scott Lang, and then Michelle Pfeiffer and Cassie, all these people meet. I would have had the Kang and Ant-Man fight. I wouldn't have killed off MODOK first off. I would just had him be going off somewhere, somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And then I would have had him, Kang beating up on Ant-Man, breaking the helmet, that same scene going on, all that kind of stuff, then knocking him out, just straight up knocking him out, and then getting ready to kill him. But Wasp comes in, Hope comes in and pulls him away, and then Cassie brings up the portal, to go back, and then they both take him out into the portal, and then Janet confronts Kang.
Yeah.
All right. They have their own new confrontation
Yeah.
here. Hope comes back out. Scott and Cassie stay in there. Cassie's protecting her dad.
Yeah.
Scott's in the Quantumania or in the real world all
all
passed out.
knocked out.
Hope
Yeah.
comes back out there, and then you see Janet with her Wasp suit on, and she pushes Hope into the portal and then destroys the portal.
Oh.
All right, she pushes Hope into the portal
Yeah.
and then destroys the portal. And then her and Kang kind of have a little confrontation and stuff, but he ultimately beats her. And then as she's laying on the ground, she uses her Wasp thingamadoo machine thing and then destroys the orb. Destroys the orb so he can't do anything yet. But then he says, that was a mistake. You shouldn't have done that, Janet. And he says, you're going to help me fix it. And then it ends right there, goes black. And then we go over to the real world. Scott's passed out. Hope's on the ground crying her eyes out, like all mad and stuff. And then Cassie's like just silent as she should be. And then the movie cuts to black.
And Janet's forced like with that same decision now.
Yes.
Like,
and that's going to build into Kang Don and some of that stuff. The screen goes black.
How do you think of all this?
Dude, I just did. I was like,
Holy
this is how it should have
crap.
ended.
That's
and
fire.
I was like,
That's fire.
screen goes black. It should have ended as a tragedy. All right, so screen goes black. And then you have like the credits start to roll, and at the very end you have Marvel Studio, or no, you go into before you even show the name of the movie, you go into the end credit scene.
Yeah.
And here's my end credit scene. You have Scott walking, bruised up, well not bruised up actually. There's going to be a time jump here. So time jump about 6 months or so. He's walking down like the alleyway he was, but nobody's there. It's dark, it's dreary, it's kind of rainy, and he's walking, sad, emotional face.
Yeah.
And then you see glimpses into what's happened since they've been to the quantum realm. You see the funeral, Hank's funeral.
Yeah.
You see him in his mind of Hope sitting in a seat with a bottle. Having been consumed with that fury.
Like Thor kind of.
Right, but haven't been consumed. She's angry. She's got a bottle of alcohol, something.
Yeah.
And Cassie's in prison. Something tragic there happening. And then Scott walking away, after remembering and thinking back to all this stuff. And then he enters the building. All right, so he enters this building, and then he sits down and he says, I need your help. I need your help. There's a big threat coming, and I don't know how we're going to stop it. And then it zooms out. You see Anthony Mackie's Captain America, and he's not dressed up. He's just sitting there looking. He's like, what's coming? And he's like, nothing good. And then Sam looks over at the Captain America shield, black, cuts to black. And then you see the Marvel Studios presents, and then it goes Kang Dynasty, and then it goes to the multiverse flash. It goes shh, and then it goes Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania end. That's how the movie should end.
Oh my goodness!
Right? How much better of a movie would this been?
But you made it, bro. You made the entire movie right there, Michael.
Like, dude, that movie would have been great.
Dude, I would have been walking out of that theater like
glad.
Yeah,
like hyped
gassed up. Yeah.
And then I would have mixed the other two end credit scenes we got into one, and then placed that at the end.
Yeah,
is what I would have done.
That would have been so good.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
I mean, would that not have been made the movie 10 times better?
Tie it in and go straight into
yes,
yeah.
Made it a tragedy. I didn't kill off everybody; just killed off all those side characters and Hank.
Yeah,
tragically, and then Janet's still alive, but she's still in the quantum realm, and Kang's making her help him, and then the whole tragedy of the past, him going to Captain America for help. I mean, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does it not?
That's beautiful, man.
I think it would have been so much better. But that's just
beautiful. Wow. Well, I did not think that much through. But what I really wanted to see, I felt like it was really cheesy that Kang got left in, the others got out. I thought, similar to you, I thought Hank should have died. But I also really wanted to see Kang leave them
right
in the quantum realm and then him escape. So then it's stuck, or maybe like Cassie gets out somehow, and it's Kang. So they're worried for the daughter out there by herself. Kang's on the loose, and they're stuck in there.
I think that would have been cool. I think that would have been cool too.
It was just cheesy that all the good guys got out without dying, and the most powerful bad guy got left in.
Right.
I didn't like that.
I think
it shouldn't have had a happy ending.
It shouldn't.
It should have been tragic.
It should have been a tragedy. He should have. I mean, I wouldn't have said he necessarily should have won, but I think he should have he should have gave some stakes, and that's what it should have happened about.
I like that part about him killing all the side characters. That was
was great.
That was hype.
Right. All right, now to get to rating it out of 10. So I guess I'll go first
Go ahead.
because mine will be a little bit higher than yours. So I'm gonna go off and say I'm gonna give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'm gonna give it. I mean, it's not like
Really?
I really, yeah. I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I mean, it's all right, but it's not. I mean, there's like mostly because of the second act in Kang. The second act was really good, and I really think that was really good. If it kept the same tone as the second act, I think it could have been 7 up range.
Yeah.
And if it would have had that ending, I think it would have been 8 range. But it just, some of those things, it really needed improvements. But 6.5, mostly because of that second act in Kang.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
I was going to go really low, but then I bumped it up, especially after thinking about the second act. I'm going to go 4.5.
Oh, wow. That's low.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
low.
really low.
And I really think as far as Marvel movies go, I think it's better than Thor: Love and Thunder, and I really think that might be it for me.
Really?
Like, I think it's better than Dark World. I think it's better than the Hulk. I think it's better than Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I have it out of all 31 Marvel
Well, not
movies.
better.
I have it at 22.
Really, 22?
I have it at 22. I have it better than Black Widow, and then some of those movies below it, and then I have it not as good as like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's where I
Really?
have it.
My just main gripe, we already talked about it, but dialogue and the CGI and no stakes. It just didn't provide a good experience at all. And especially for being the end of a trilogy,
Right.
it really just did not hit home. So I find myself just wanting to give it higher, but I can't because I
understand.
just really don't want to watch it again, honestly, at this point.
That's respectful. That's
Yeah,
respectful.
I'm
Yeah, I
going
completely
4.5.
understand. I mean, I will say I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't think it was as good as it could have been and should have been, and it had all the tools necessary. That's my personal take.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know by giving us a review and a download. Our podcast, Here's in the Moment, is available on all major podcast platforms, so check us out. Speaking of checking us out, listen to our past episodes. Our last one was our weekly recap, number 28, I surely do believe. Then coming up later this week, we'll have our weekly recap 29. So that'll be hype, ton of news, a lot of content, so go ahead and check that out.
Yep.
If you want to stay up to date with the news, the new episode drops, the announcements, check out the socials, the Instagram. We got Here's in the Moment, and then TikTok, Here's in the Moment with Nesha T.
And we just want to thank y'all for listening. And as always, we love you 3000.